Alright, Pokemon GO Fest 2021 is just a few days away, and this video will serve as the be-all end-all guide to this massive Pokemon GO event. I'll go over everything from getting prepared, what to expect, and how to maximize your day. This year is going to be very different from previous GO Fests, so make sure you pay attention to this video. Okay, so with that said, let's roll the intro and get right into it. How's it going, everyone? It's me, it's Count, and in today's video, I'll be giving you a comprehensive guide on Pokemon GO Fest 2021. All of the info in this video is geared towards those who bought tickets for this premiere event. Of course, this is not going to cater to all playstyles, but if you want the most efficient and maximized experience, then the tips in this video should help you out. Alright, so with that said, let's get right into the Pokemon GO Fest guide. First and foremost, you will want to prepare for the event in-game and out of the game. Let's talk about items. This year's Pokemon GO Fest is going to have a heavy emphasis on raiding during the second day, but the first day is going to run traditionally like previous GO Fests. Let's focus on preparing for the first day. If this is not your first time with GO Fest, then you should know that Pokeballs and incense are going to be your key items that you will use throughout the day. Assuming you will not be in an area where you will consistently replenish your supply of Pokeballs, I suggest you save up at least 600 Great Balls and 300 Ultra Balls for this event. A good rule of thumb is to double your typical supply for community days. If you plan to use a Go Plus on the second day, then make sure you stock up on at least 700 regular Pokeballs and avoid using them on the first day. All of this will require a few hours of spinning Pokestops, so make sure you stock up throughout the days leading up to Pokemon GO Fest. Now, depending on your playstyle, you might just be shiny checking throughout the day and won't need as many Pokeballs compared to others. However, I highly suggest you stock up on as many balls as you can regardless. You will not want your Pokeball supply to be a point of concern throughout any moment of both days of the event. For the second day, you will want to stock up on raid passes and golden raspberries. What you should do is spend your daily free raid passes leading up to Pokemon GO Fest so that you could stock up on golden raspberries. If you can solo a 3-star raid, then this is what you could farm up. If you have Poke Coins to spend, then make sure you buy the current Ultra Box as it contains a hefty amount of raid passes. Do note that you will get a ton of free raid passes throughout the second day, up to 10 of them actually, but it would be best to have at least 50 premium raid passes on hand. This is of course if you plan to raid casually or you plan to be in an area that doesn't have high gym density. But if you plan to raid hardcore on the second day, then have at least 100 raid passes readily available. Of course, if you don't plan to go out at all during the second day, then save those Poke Coins for remote raid passes. Make sure you fill up your friends list with active raiders so that you can get those raid invites throughout the entire day. There are plenty of Discords you can join that have a ton of active raiders around the world. Find these communities and get as many active raiders on your friends list as possible, and don't forget to set your status to online. It's going to be insane in terms of the number of raids you could potentially do, so make sure you are stocked up on both raid passes and friends. And of course, make sure you clear out your item bag space of unnecessary items. With this many raids in one day, you are most certainly going to be filling up your item bag really quickly. Thus, you really don't need to stock up on raid essential items, and those item slots are better served stocking up for day one. You should delete items like revives and potions and make space for Pokeballs. The reason why I say this is because if you plan to go hard on the second day, you will quickly replenish your revive and potion supply from the raid rewards alone. It's absolutely unnecessary for the first day, and you should focus on keeping your Pokeball, berry, and premium item supply as high as you can. Next, let's talk about Pokemon storage. The last few Pokemon Go Fests, I caught approximately 2,000 Pokemon throughout both events. Now, I went pretty hard on these past events, just quit catching whatever Pokemon on screen. Throughout the event, I would have to frequently stop and clear out my Pokemon storage, which resulted in a lot of wasted time. You can prevent this by clearing out your Pokemon storage prior to the event. The best thing to do is to clear out any Pokemon you are currently holding on to for mass evolutions, trades, etc. Sure, it might be useful to hold on to your several shiny duplicates from this year's community days, but remember that we do have a makeup community day that will feature every shiny that came out this year. Thus, it's absolutely unnecessary to hold on to low IV community day shinies from this year. Also, remember that you will be getting plenty of new shinies throughout Pokemon Go Fest as well. So if you have a ton of duplicates of certain shinies, it might be okay to transfer a few you don't think you will ever use. The next thing you should do is clear out all of your low IV duplicate legendaries. Of course, the big reason for this is because nearly every legendary that was ever released in raid battles will be available on the second day. Ideally, you will want to have about 1,500 Pokemon storage space now open. Even with this much space, you will still likely have to manage your storage during the event. In order to speed up the process, I highly suggest you copy and save this search string, as it will clear up your recently caught Pokemon of any 3-star, perfect IV, and shinies. You can then mass transfer the rest. But do keep in mind that this search string will not filter out Pokemon with ideal IVs for PvP. So if you're big on battling, make sure you manually filter out PvP Pokemon when you use this search string. Now that we covered items and Pokemon storage, let's talk about how you can prepare yourself outside of the game. The most important thing you need to do is pick a venue for where you are going to play. As you may know, several cities around the world are going to have in-person gatherings for Pokemon Go Fest. If you are vaccinated and willing to meet in a large gathering, then this might be the route you will want to take. However, what you should do is talk to your local communities and see where a majority of players are going to play. If there is a massive hotspot with a lot of spawns, gyms, and Pokestops, then that is where you will want to be. But of course, make sure you are being as safe as you possibly can. Mask up, social distance, and if you are not vaccinated, see if you can find a small park with a high density of spawns instead of going to one of these hotspots. Right, so let's recap. In order to be best prepared for Go Fest, make sure you have 600 Great Balls and 300 Ultra Balls, about 10 incense, and about 50 premium raid passes. Of course, if you don't plan to go out to raid, then instead have plenty of Poke Coins for remote raid passes. If you plan to use a Go Plus while you raid on the second day, have about 700 Pokeballs stocked up. Make sure you delete revives and potions as you stock up on Pokeballs, because you will replenish them through the raid rewards alone. Also, make sure you clear out your Pokemon storage so that you have about 1,500 open slots. Copy and save this search string for day of storage management. Okay, so with all of that said, now let's move on to what you should expect for each day from a gameplay point of view. Like I said earlier in this video, the first day of Pokemon Go Fest will run pretty much like how previous Pokemon Go Fests ran. You will start off with a special research and will be catching Pokemon en masse throughout the day. Similar to last year, it seems there will be a rotating habitat every hour, with each hour giving different spawns in the wild. Here are the habitats and their spawns that you will see during the event. The first habitat, which will be during the first rotating hour of the event, will be a jungle-themed habitat with increased spawns of Scyther, Froakie, and Aipom, with Ludicolo, Chatot, Leafeon, and Serperior spawning from incense. The second habitat will be the Desert Mountain habitat, and you will see an increased spawn of Skarmory, Shieldon, and Hippopotas, with Flareon, Tyranitar, Flygon, and Throh spawning from incense. The third habitat is the Ocean habitat, and will have increased spawns of Dratini, Swablu, and Alomomola, with Gyarados, Vaporeon, Azumarill, and Sawk spawning from incense. And finally, the fourth habitat, which I predict is going to be the one habitat most players will focus on, is the cave habitat. This habitat will have increased spawns of Roggenrola, Galarian Stunfisk, and Dino, with Umbreon, Gardevoir, and Galvantula from Incense. Within each of the habitats, you will also see music-related Pokemon spawning throughout the day, and Unknown G and Unknown F will be spawning from Incense at random, which can potentially be shiny. Speaking of which, the new shinies that will debut with Pokémon GO Fest 2021 will be the regional Pokemon Sock and Throw. If you want to pick up these new shinies, then make sure you keep your eye out for these particular Pokemon during the Desert, Mountain, and Ocean habitats. Other new shinies that are debuting include Whismur, Tympole, and Audino. These will be spawning throughout the day regardless of the habitat, so make sure you shiny check any one of them. The special research, if it is anything like previous years, will involve catching Pokemon of all different types, as well as performing various activities like raiding, transferring, evolving, etc. Most likely, you will need to actively play through each habitat in order to complete this special research, so make sure you allot yourself enough time to play through every habitat. Once you complete it, you will be able to get the mythical Pokemon Meloetta, as well as either a Rockstar Pikachu or Popstar Pikachu. Personally, I'm going to go with the Popstar Pikachu because I'm a huge K-pop stan and I just can't resist. Fortunately, you can still pick up the other Pikachu that you did not choose through snapshot encounters, so if you want both of these awesome costume Pikachus, make sure you don't forget to take snapshots of your Pokemon in order to encounter them. Now, special research is not the only thing that's going to be a highlight. Every hour, there will be some kind of global challenge that will unlock a specific bonus for the rest of that particular hour. If it is anything like the Kanto Tour event or Pokemon GO Fest of last year, these will be XP bonuses, Stardust bonuses, and Candy bonuses, so make sure you are checking your Today tab and participating in those challenges. Also, make sure you have incense running throughout the entire event. If you have enough of them, I suggest just stacking 10 of them at the start so that you don't ever forget having them on. And finally, don't forget to take snapshots of your Pokemon. Just have fun with it and enjoy the experience, and make sure you practice social distancing and keeping yourself safe. In closing, here are the things you should focus on during day 1. First, catch everything and shiny check everything. Second, complete the special research as early as possible so that you could spend the rest of the day focusing on catching and shiny checking. Third, pay close attention to the Today tab for the global challenges. Make sure you actively participate in them so that you can have special bonuses unlocked every hour. Okay, now let's move on to day 2, which I believe is going to be the big highlight of this year's Pokemon GO Fest. If you recall those special legendary raid days that we used to have back in the day, this will basically be similar to that but on a whole different scale. First off, we will be getting every single legendary that has ever been in a raid battle appearing in 5-star raids throughout this entire day. Pretty much every gym will have some raid battle during this day, and the respawn timers will be minuscule. Each hour will have rotating raid habitats that will have a select pool of legendaries related to those habitats spawning in raids. Let's go over them now. The first hour will be the Wind habitat, and we'll have Mewtwo, Ho-Oh, Latios, Latias, Regigigas, Altered Form Giratina, Cresselia, Therian Form Tornadus, and Virizion in 5-star raids. The second hour is the Lava habitat, and we'll have Moltres, Entei, Heatran, Reshiram, Groudon, Regirock, Therian Form Landorus, Yveltal, and Terrakion in 5-star raids. The third hour is the Frost habitat, and we'll have Articuno, Lugia, Kyogre, Suicune, Regice, Palkia, Kyurem, and the Lake Trio legendary of your region. And finally, the fourth hour will be the Thunder habitat, featuring Zapdos, Raikou, Registeel, Rayquaza, Dialga, Terrian Form Thundurus, Zekrom, Xerneas, and Cobalion in 5-star raids. Now, out of all of these raid bosses, there are a few that I want to highlight. First, there are certainly plenty of Pokemon that are good for PvP. More specifically, this is a great opportunity for you to get Cresselia and Registeel, which are standouts for the Great League and Ultra League. And of course, Mewtwo, Groudon, Kyogre, Zekrom, Reshiram, Dialga, and Rayquaza are premier legendaries that are useful in most of the endgame content, including the Master League, gym battles, as well as raid battles. Finally, there are a small number of legendary Pokemon that will not appear in raids throughout the event. This includes the incarnate forms of the Forces of Nature and the origin form of Giratina. If you're looking for any of these particular legendaries, unfortunately they will not be available. So the most important thing is that you hone in on specific Pokemon to raid during this day. Since raids will be spawning around the clock, you will have several 5-star raids going on at any given moment. And since there is a limited number of raids you will be able to do, make sure you focus on very specific raid bosses that you will value more than others. For example, if you have holes in your Pokedex, seek out these Pokemon first. If you're looking to farm XL candies for specific legendaries that don't often appear in raids, focus on them. One important thing to note is that Mewtwo will be in raid battles for a few weeks after Pokémon GO Fest, so it may not necessarily be important to raid Mewtwo when there are plenty of other legendaries that will be spawning in raids that don't often get released. Make sure you are planning out which legendaries you want to raid, and make sure you coordinate with your friends on what and where you will want to raid. If you plan the day out right, you should be able to do several dozen, if not hundreds, of legendary raids on this one day. It cannot be overstated how important this one day will be. This is your best opportunity to collect XL candies for some of the rarest and most relevant legendaries in the game. This is also your best chance to build up your raid medals, get rare candies, and of course XP and Stardust. If you have lucky eggs and star pieces running all day, the potential amount of XP that you can get is astronomical. What you should do is stack up lucky eggs right at the beginning and just raid as many as you can. Now, the best way you can maximize the amount of raids on this day is to have a Wafu car group. If you and let's say 4 of your friends carpool together and raid in a heavily populated area with a high number of gyms, you'll be able to get a ton of raids done within the event time period. If you are able, and especially if you are vaccinated, I highly suggest you communicate with your local community and see if anyone is interested in doing Wafu raids. Okay, so to recap, day 2 of Pokemon GO Fest is going to be all about raiding. Pretty much every legendary that was ever available in Pokemon Go will be appearing in 5-star raids throughout the day. Each hour will have a rotating pool of specific legendaries, so it's important that you prepare yourself with a list of specific legendaries you want to focus on. And finally, see if you can get yourself involved with your community on setting up a Carpool Wafu raid group. Plan out the whole day with your friends in a heavily populated area with a high number of gyms. But most important of all, make sure you are only doing this if you are vaccinated, and always practice social distancing. Alright, so there you have it everyone. This was my comprehensive guide for Pokemon GO Fest 2021. But of course, there's plenty of tips that can be shared around. So if you have any important tip for either day of Pokemon GO Fest that I did not mention, make sure you share it down below. And I have to emphasize this as I close out this video, make sure you are being safe as you possibly can. Regardless if you are vaccinated or not, please adhere to local restrictions, wear your mask, stay hydrated, and social distance as much as possible. Always prioritize your safety and the safety of your loved ones over this game. So yeah, that's gonna be it. If you enjoyed this video, smash that like button, subscribe if it's your first time here. I am Count Jinsula. Be safe, have fun, and I'll catch you all next time.